Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. Now, with only a few days to go of this cruel summer, I hope you've managed to fill your blank spaces of August and you're now raring to go for Zandvoort. Are you ready for it? I'll stop with the Taylor Swift references now because David Croft joins me for this podcast. We're going to preview the Dutch Grand Prix and look at some of the big storylines. But before we do that, Crofty, you're in a spectacular t-shirt having been at Taylor Swift the other night. Come on, how was it?
Well, on behalf of all fellow Swifties, it was absolutely magnificent, and all the rustiness that I had, Matt, having not been to a Taylor Swift concert for many a long year, we managed to shake it off from the very start. Shall we say, what a night. It was brilliant. I took my stepdaughter and we just had the most fabulous time, as I think have, it seems half the population of London if you're walking around the capital city at the moment.
Yeah,
everyone's dressed in Taylor Swift attire. I bought the shirt. I'm gonna get some made up with my own face on it and just put the Eras tour. I thought that might be better.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Thank you.
It's a lovely t-shirt. And yeah, I still really want to go. I put up an Instagram story the other day asking if anyone had any spare tickets and got a lot of laughing emojis back at me. So, but look, it's a good show. It looks amazing.
No such thing as a spare ticket. I'd hobble on crutches down Wembley Way to see that show again. And there were a few people doing that as well. It was mega. And I've got some friendship bracelets somewhere, but I can't find them, that have got lights out and away we go on them that I was given by some fans down in Australia. So they were very much worn to the gig and were very useful. People like those. They were doing all the trading, all us fellow Swifties, including my stepdaughter, who basically spent a large part of last week making friendship bracelets. I've never seen her as focused on a job as she was then. I wish she'd be more focused on her homework like that, but we've got to start somewhere.
It's the summer holidays. Let her off. Maybe just for this month. We'll stop talking about Taylor Swift now, and we'll start talking about some of the big storylines heading into Zandvoort because there are so many. So here's what we're going to try and get through. We're going to talk about the driver and constructor championships because McLaren stand a good chance, very very good chance of catching Red Bull in the constructor championships, and we'll also dive into the driver championship as well. We'll talk about the errors perhaps that McLaren are maybe trying to eradicate as they go into the second half of the season. We're going to talk about Mercedes. They've won 3 of the last 4 races. Can they keep that form going into the second half of the year? The FIA, who had a busy summer, they have updated some technical regulations. We're going to explain, aren't we, Crofty, what asymmetrical braking is and how that could impact the rest of the competitive order for the rest of the season. And then we'll also perhaps look at some of the runners and riders for the final 4 seats in Formula One. Ricciardo versus Lawson. I've put that not to pit them against each other, but perhaps they are being pitted against each other. All will be revealed. That's quite a lot, isn't it, to get through, but we'll try.
We will do our best, and it's only me and you, Matt. I think the rest of the Sky Sports F1 team still on their holidays, but we'll all assemble in Zandvoort on Thursday. Don't worry, we'll be there.
They'll be there, yes. We hope. Fingers crossed. Right, let's start then talking about the championship, because I think that's the place to start. And we should remember and we should be excited by just what we've got ahead of us in these final 10 races, with it being so close, with probably 8 drivers week in, week out, able or with the ability to win. Let's look at the Constructors' Championship first. McLaren are now 42 points behind Red Bull. And as unlikely as it is, this weekend they have a chance of leapfrogging Red Bull mathematically.
Well, they do. And a Red Bull team that have led that Constructors' Championship since Spain 2022, which I make 53 races and on Sunday 826 days ago. So That's a long time to continuously lead the Constructors' Championship. And I think Red Bull will still lead it when we go away from Zandvoort. But I'd rather get the feeling, if not Monza, certainly by Baku, that we're going to see McLaren overhaul Red Bull in that Constructors' Championship. They have momentum. They have a confidence. They have been chipping away at Red Bull's points advantage, and crucially, Matt, that they're scoring with 2 drivers and scoring good points with 2 drivers. Now, at the start of the summer, Red Bull announced Sergio Perez would carry on for the rest of this season, which didn't surprise me in the slightest. Fully expected Sergio to stay with the team. Is it a good decision? Well, time will tell on that one. I'm not so sure. I really am not. I think Sergio has hit a run of form that is very difficult to win a championship when you've got a driver in that run of form. There are times he gets knocked out in Q1 where he shouldn't be getting knocked out in Q1. It means that trying to get a decent points finish is very tricky from the race. And whilst his teammate is now not winning and consistently in the way that he was at the start of the year, Red Bull needs Sergio to step up. Now, if he doesn't step up, maybe there is an alternative in 3 or 4 races' time where they can bring another driver in. But to me, they had a good chance with the summer break to have a bit of a reset, just to say to Sergio, look, sit this out for the rest of the year. We're going to bring in Liam Lawson and see what he can do. They've got a squad, haven't they, of drivers? It's almost like they can make a tactical substitution should they need to on that one, but yet still have Sergio very much on their books. And look, I hope he produces the goods for them. I think he has been a fine driver in his career, but that's not happening at the moment. And will Red Bull pay the price for not making the tough decision? As I say, only time will tell, but I fully expect Max to be winning the Drivers' Championship. I think that 78-point lead over Lando Norris is enough to see him home. But I do think we could have a different Constructors' Champion at the end of the season. And if it's not McLaren and Ferrari's upgrades that are coming for Zandvoort this weekend come good, it could well be Ferrari. There's so much competition for points, and Sergio, sadly, is on the losing end of that squabble for points between the top 8 drivers.
Do you buy into perhaps a frustration? I'm going to say a frustration from fans that actually at this stage of the season, we want one driver, don't we? 1 or 2 drivers maybe winning week in, week out. Because what we've got, if this was the start of the season, we'd be delighted. We'd have so many different drivers and teams in with a chance of winning. But given Max's lead now, actually what we need is just Lando or just Charles or just Oscar to be amassing those points. But I know what you mean, but to get that championship fight. Yeah, okay. Tell me why.
I really disagree with that. What we need, if you want variety, and let's face it, variety is not a bad thing. What we need is just drivers to be beating Max. They don't have to be winning a race. They just have to be beating Max and chipping away at his lead. The trouble we've had, I suppose, we've had such variety. It's only Australia, Monaco, and Hungary where Max's lead has been reduced. But what we need Max to be finishing 4th and 3 drivers to be finishing ahead of him for that lead to be going down. Which is why I don't think we're going to get anything other than a Max Verstappen win in the championship. I think he'll be consistent enough to be either winning. And look, he could well turn up in Zandvoort and win it by a country mile. We don't know, even though Helmut Marko is saying that our upgrades are not good and we haven't really done anything because we haven't had a chance because we've had the summer break, so don't expect miracles. Don't forget, Max, though, was the fastest in qualifying in Spa, different track, I know, and was not hugely far off it in Hungary either. So I don't think it's depth of despair for Max, and I think he has the consistency that he'll get those points. But you need Lando and Oscar to be beating Max. You need Charles and Oscar and Lando to be beating Max to make significant dents in that Drivers' Championship. But no, I don't want to see less variety because I want to see lots of drivers having a chance and fighting it out in front. And I don't care who wins the championship at the end of the season, as long as we get an exciting season. That's all I really care about in my love and appreciation of Formula One, and also my job as a commentator for Sky.
Never happy Formula One. Well, I speak on behalf of the fans.
I'm really happy.
You're always happy with what you're seeing. I guess. Yeah. I mean, 1 minute we're asking for variety, then everyone starts winning, and then we go, no, we just want 1 or 2 people to win. No, come on. Let's be grateful for where we are and the exciting races we've got ahead.
Yeah, but let's look at this strategically. I think we're 2 or 3 races away from team orders here. And team orders being imposed regularly, whereby if Oscar is second to Lando in that McLaren battle, Oscar, you're driving for your teammate because we need to prioritise him. Sergio, well, he knows his role. That's always been second to Max ever since he signed for the team, really. Ferrari, Charles and Carlos are a little bit closer together, and that's maybe a more difficult task, especially with one of them leaving. And that could be the same at Mercedes because you've got George and Lewis and a team going great guns at the moment. But who do you say gets priority there? George will want to have that priority.
I would love to be in the room.
Well, exactly. Should have won Spa, but for being underweight, and that wasn't his fault, wasn't the team's fault. It's just one of those things that happens there. But Lewis benefited to the extent that he went and then picked up the win, his second win in the space of 3 races. So he's now, what's the difference between Lewis and George? It's 34 points, I think, isn't it, in the championship. Lewis should get priority if Mercedes are going to do team orders, but they're normally the last team that wants to do team orders. They want to give both drivers an equal chance. Lewis is probably a little bit too far away to seriously think about winning that drivers' championship, but give it 2 or 3 races. If the lead of Max's is chipped away, then I think we start to see team orders and we'll get less variety. We'll see teams going, right, Lando's our main man, Lewis is our main man, Charles is our main man, for instance. And that will then solidify things a little bit more. And then Red Bull's decision not to replace Sergio Perez could be even more critical because the teams then focus on one driver, not both, that are challenging Red Bull.
Let's talk about the Ferrari challenge. And I think, Fred Vasseur said in Belgium, he said that the next sequence, he used the word sequence of tracks, should suit the Ferrari. So, obviously Zandvoort this weekend, Monza, Baku, Singapore, Circuit of the Americas. Do you anticipate a resurgent? Because it's been rough, a bit of a rough ride, hasn't it, recently for Ferrari? Ever
since Spain, and the upgrades that came in Spain that they then brought a solution to in Canada that didn't work. Now, there's an upgrade package coming in Zandvoort. There's a new floor as part of that upgrade package. They have got to get rid of the bouncing, and if they don't, then the season's gone. They can't run the car in the setup that they need to extract the maximum pace. And if they can't get rid of the bouncing, then Charles and Carlos are going to have a very sore head going home after the Italian Grand Prix, because the one place you want that bouncing not to appear is Monza, quite frankly. So I think Zandvoort is a critical weekend for Ferrari. If those upgrades work, brilliant, they're back in the ballpark, and we'll see what happens from there on in. And maybe Freddie's right. Maybe the next tracks are going to suit them a little bit more. Maybe they can take advantage of a weaker Red Bull, if we are to believe what Helmut Marko was saying. Although I don't think Red Bull are that weak at the moment. And certainly McLaren aren't weak at the moment and seem to have a car that goes pretty well on most tracks. As now, Mercedes are finding, with more and more upgrades coming to that car that seem to be working on performance, not just curing the problems that were dogging him in the first part of the season. So it's mouthwatering, isn't it?
It's so exciting.
And the true answer to will Ferrari be the team to watch out for at Zandvoort? Will it be Red Bull? Will it be McLaren? Will it be Mercedes? I have no idea. And one of the great things about the summer shutdown is the teams do shut down for 2 weeks. Part of the commercial department who still have to go and do some work. But the teams themselves, anyone involved with producing the car, working on the car in any way, shape or form, including suppliers and contractors, that's it. You can't do it. So it's basically 2 weeks of complete inactivity. It's the sport is frozen, and then everyone picks up their laptops. Well, today, Monday the 19th of August, we are recording the podcast today on the day that everyone's gone back to work again. And we'll be in Zandvoort in 3 days' time. And we'll see what happens from there on in. So I think that summer shutdown is absolutely fabulous because people can't steal an unfair advantage during the course of the summer.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to know what would happen if it wasn't a shutdown, right? What if the teams did actually get 4 weeks to work on their car? That would be quite an interesting
I remember speaking, I had a great conversation with Andrea Stella at an airport. We do most of our...
Often your conversations are at airports, Crofty, aren't they?
Well, we do, yeah. While we're waiting for planes, we tend to have some really good conversations.
Well, they can't escape, can they?
Yeah, quite. Got you in the queue now, that's it. The last time he's going to do a chat and cut with me, I tell you. I had him chatting for hours. No, we were chatting away about the winter, the proposed winter week off and the shutdown. And I said, well, I think it's a bit unfair, the winter shutdown, because, you know, you're asking people then to take 3 of their 5 weeks on specific weeks. What if they haven't got kids? What if they want to go away when it's not a kid's holidays? I think it's a bit unfair from the sport. He went, well, yeah, no, I see your point. But we need these shutdowns. We need a winter shutdown over Christmas to stop me working on Christmas Day. So don't be stupid. No one works on Christmas Day, really. He went, no, I did. And I would. And I would because others would. And I know that others would, so I'd be working on Christmas Day, and that's not fair on my family, and it's not fair on anyone's family. So we kind of need to save ourselves from ourselves. That's the mentality in Formula One. You know, when you get to the top and the pinnacle of your career, which most people who work in Formula One see it that way, and certainly, you know, and you can't blame them for that. Then they want to put even more effort in to make sure they stay at the top and in the pinnacle of their career. And that means sacrificing family time on the likes of Christmas Day. And that's not right, because everyone should have time off with their family, because, you know, you really should be working to live, not living to work, if that makes sense.
It's interesting. Yeah. From a sporting perspective, you're right. Every day is an advantage, right? Every hour you can spend working on the car or working on strategy, whatever it is an advantage. So yeah, that, I guess, that is why we have a shutdown. And right. I'm sure the people who have had 2 weeks off are very grateful to be coming back after that. I just wonder as well, Crofty, the Dutch Grand Prix, we've had it now. This will be our 4th Dutch Grand Prix.
Well,
every time
fourth since we came back to Zandvoort.
Since we came back, I beg your pardon. Yeah, since we came back to Holland. So the fourth Dutch Grand Prix, Max Verstappen has won every single one. Max Verstappen also has won every race before each of those Dutch Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And we come to the Dutch Grand Prix this time. He hasn't won in 4 races. He's going to need the Orange Army, isn't he? This weekend. This is actually quite a unique setting for the Dutch Grand Prix, as sort of an event almost that seems a bit of a formality, that the orange cannons and the orange fireworks are going to go off at the end of the race when Max wins.
It's a test of fandom, isn't it?
Yeah,
really. It's like asking Manchester City fans to go to the last game of the home game of the season. And by the way, you might not be guaranteed to see the Premier League trophy being lifted this year. And see how they feel on that one. And it is a weird one. Max has not only won the last 3 at Zandvoort, but he led, 186 out of the 210 laps that we've had as well. He's won them all from pole, and he's dominated. Now, you could argue that were it not for the engine penalty in Spa, he would have dominated that race, and he would have won in Spa. He was 0.6 of a second clear in Q3 and would have been a very worthy pole sitter, but he did have to take that engine penalty. So therefore he didn't win the race preceding the Dutch Grand Prix. And it is a long time. 2020, I think, was the last time that Max didn't win 4 races in a row. So that's a long time that people have had to wait. Late 2020 for Max to win a race. Now, he could bound back and he could take this by the scruff of his neck at a track where it's difficult to overtake, go and get it on pole and convert that into a win, and everyone will be saying, crisis, what crisis? But he definitely wasn't happy with the performance of his car in Spa, and he definitely wasn't happy with the performance of his car in Hungary and the situation he found himself in during the race. Now, he's had a couple of weeks to calm down a bit and take some time out and re-energize himself, so we'll see what Max comes back. But as for the Dutch fans, the true test of fandom is when you continue to cheer as loudly and support as loudly your hero when they're not doing as well, you know? Often, you know, it makes the good times even more worthwhile when they come good eventually, that you've been there through the lesser successful moments. And you know, if this is a lesser successful moment for Max, he'll be a 10-time champion by the time he retires.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a situation he hasn't found himself in for the last 3 years.
Yeah, and he carries himself so well, doesn't he? You wouldn't think he's under pressure ever, such as his persona.
Apart from during the race in Hungary, where I do think the way he acted was out of order on the radio, and I said that a couple of times in commentary. So we'll move on then.
Yeah. Let's not dwell.
Maybe I dwelled a bit much that day, but
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was interesting that watching that race, it wasn't just Max under pressure. He looked tetchy, sounded tetchy. He sounded tired and grumpy. I know what I'm like if I haven't had a decent night's sleep the night before. He did sound grumpy, and the team agreed that he was grumpy as well, because they told him that he couldn't be staying up that late again to do sim racing the nights before a race. So move on.
Which we can easily do, to Mercedes form. And I mentioned it at the top, didn't I? Won 3 out of the last 4 races. I wonder do Mercedes now sit there and go, we've actually unlocked the ground effect regulations. We feel like finally, since 2022, since they were introduced, we have just got on top of, and we can now develop and we can progress. Do you think that's a fair comment? Do you think they will be thinking that?
Yeah, I do. Reading Andrew Chauvelin's comments that I'm sure he made before the summer break, I was just reading them today. He was talking about the correlation between our setup tools, our wind tunnel, our CFD, and the track being a lot better. Our ideas that are coming through being more useful because the correlation is now much better. Never been a shortage of ideas, but the correlation wasn't that great beforehand, and we were maybe going down the wrong path because the ideas were good, but the way we put them into practice wasn't. He said, but I think it's that they're understanding this current car, they're understanding how to make it faster, and having more time to work on making it faster rather than trying to cure the problems that they don't understand. Because whilst you're trying to cure the problems you don't understand, you're not really concentrating on performance. And they're just starting to see the benefits now of a clear path ahead. It's like, what's the best way to put it? They've spent a year and a half weeding. They've got rid of all the weeds, and now they can plant some colour for the garden.
Lovely analogy.
There's a summertime analogy if ever there was one.
Yeah.
And if the sun came out this afternoon, I'd go and do a bit more weeding in my garden, but it doesn't want to go anywhere near me.
Would make Monty Don proud.
I'd certainly try. But I think that's where they're at. That Mercedes are at a positive place where they understand how to make things better and how to get a better baseline to start the weekend and to then kick on from there. And let's hope that continues as well. Because it's fabulous to see both George Russell and Lewis Hamilton with the ability to go and win a race. And either could have won that race in Spa, and I'm still, I know the car was underweight, but not by a huge amount. But technical regs are technical regs. But I'm still so impressed with the way George Russell raced in Spa, the way that he changed his strategy, and the way that he produced a faultless drive that in the end ended up with no points for him, and that was really hard luck. But as I say, technical regs are technical regs. But both Martin and myself, we expected Lewis to cruise up to George and pass him with ease, given how long he'd been on those tyres, 34 laps in the end. But Lewis didn't have much of a chance to get past at all. So that was good driving by George. So don't count him out of making more drives like that in the future as well. Let's see how Zandvoort suits that Mercedes car.
It's actually another reason to be excited for these 10 races is because we haven't really had a George versus Lewis in the race in racing, have we? Over the course of the time that they've been together, we've had moments, we've had the odd race here or there, but because of the lack of competitiveness of the car, that sort of, when we looked ahead to 2022 when he joined Mercedes, we were so excited about the prospect of them going head to head in the same machinery when obviously the Mercedes was as competitive as it was, and obviously it hasn't transpired to be competitive. But yeah, I guess as fans we want to see that, don't we? We want to see those two drivers going head to head, because we know obviously how good Lewis is, and we know how good George is proving himself to be as well.
We also want to see those moments where they get quite close together and it doesn't quite work out. And, there's it's left with a bit of angst and argy-bargy over the team radio and on the track. Bring it on. More moments.
Bring it on. Well, I guess speaking of George Russell, his teammate for 2025 is probably the most pressing issue that Mercedes have got to decide.
Do you know who it's going to be?
Well, I can guess who it's going to be.
Go on then.
Do you know who it's going to be?
No, I have no idea at all.
I've
been on holiday. I've been at Taylor Swift. And before that, I was paddleboarding at Centre Park. So I've had no time to be asking these questions.
Good. I'm glad you shut down as well as yes. The teams and the cars. Yes. But look, I mean, if it ends up being Kimi Antonelli, which I guess seems to be the strongest option now, I was just thinking about, and you mentioned it earlier with regards to Sergio Perez, how important it is nowadays in this sort of uber competitive Formula One environment to have two drivers scoring points week in, week out. It's gonna be a bit of a baptism of fire, but it's the pressure is going to be on from day dot, isn't it? If you're Kimi Antonelli, or is it going to be actually a lot of that attention is going to be when we look ahead to 2025 and we go, wait, we've got Lewis Hamilton driving for Ferrari. Is every camera in the paddock not going to be down at the Ferrari hospitality trying to get, almost, you can sort of imagine Kimi Antonelli going a bit under the radar the first few weeks because, frankly, Lewis to Ferrari is the big story.
It is a massive story, but I think Kimi Antonelli is going to attract enough headlines himself if that's the case. And I don't want to sound like I'm sat on the fence here, but every time I think Kimi Antonelli is going to get the drive, then I change my mind and think, but it could be someone else. Get onto that in a moment. And every time I think Mercedes are right to put Kimi Antonelli in, because I think he is a fine driver. And I'm not sure what's going on at his F2 team, but it's not just him; it's Ollie Behrman as well that seem to be struggling at times. Albeit Antonelli's done better in the last couple of races. And every time I think it's right, I think, oh no, there's too much pressure on him. Or what's the point in putting him in 2025 when everything's going to change so drastically for 2026? Why not just have him working on the sim religiously for 2026 and driving next year's car the 26 car next year on the sim whilst giving him another year in F2, to keep on racing. And I still think Mercedes are a bit undecided as to what the best way forward is on that as well. But they also have a duty to get the best drivers they possibly can and as many points as they can to get as many championship dollars as they can as well, because that means a huge amount to the team, to the people working for the team, and they're standing in Formula One. The question is, if you're not going to go for Kimi Antonelli, are you going to lock him in for 26? And if they can lock him in for 26 and not race him next year, then that's fine. 26, I think, is the more important year, and they don't want to lose him because, of course, Toto Wolff did lose a young driver by the name of Verstappen that slipped through his fingers and went off to Red Bull. But could Verstappen be coming to Mercedes? And there is still that question hanging in the air. And Martin Brund and myself were talking about this a few races ago, and we both came to the conclusion that if you were Max Verstappen, you don't need to make a decision now, or a few races ago, or now at the end of the summer break, or the middle of October. You can make a decision on the 27th of December if you want, if the offer is there from Mercedes, as long as you have a clause to leave Red Bull this year. Now, there are stories that clause has now been taken out of the equation, and a deal has been done so that the Helmut Marko clause, as it were, doesn't now exist. But if a driver wants to leave, I'm sure a way can be found for a driver to leave a team. You don't want to keep someone there who's not happy. But he definitely doesn't need to make a decision as long as Mercedes are happy to wait just yet. Now, if Toto Wolff says, Max, I need you to make a decision by the end of September, well, then he needs to make a decision by the end of September. But you're playing a risky game if you're Toto Wolff, because he's the one driver, Max Verstappen, that you want in that car to replace Lewis Hamilton, if you can have any driver whatsoever. So I still don't know, Matt, is the honest answer. And anything could happen and probably will happen, and I won't be surprised by any of it because it will make perfect sense. I'll go back to Sergio Perez. I wasn't surprised that they kept him on. I didn't think it was the right idea, but it didn't surprise me because it does make perfect sense. Commercially, he's very valuable. He's a very good teammate for Max Verstappen. He keeps Max happy. There's no conflict between the two drivers. He's very important for Red Bull as a drinks company. Sells a lot of cans and they fly off the shelves in North America and in Central America as well, a lot of which is down to Sergio Perez and the marketing that they do. And he's an ally of Christian Horner. So it does make a lot of sense for Christian Horner to keep him there. But it doesn't make a lot of sense on track. We'll see on that one. So who knows how this is going to play out. But if you're Kimi Antonelli, I think you know that you're wanted by Mercedes. You know your future is in Formula One. You will be reassured by Toto Wolff that eventually, you will make it into Formula One. But it might be he has to prepare himself to wait for another year. And I think it's Max or Kimi. And if you ask me to get off the fence, I think it's more likely to be the young driver and Kimi Antonelli than it is Max Verstappen. But whilst there is a chance, you're Toto Wolff, you're the Mercedes, team. You're going to wait until Max says there's a definite no, I'm not going anywhere.
I was just thinking in terms of qualities you need to be a young driver now. Patience is probably number one.
Absolutely,
you need to be a good driver. You need to have good backing. But you actually need, if you ask Liam Lawson, if you ask Jack Doohan, if you ask all of these very accomplished F2 drivers who've been waiting in the wings now for a number of years, you need patience because it's not going to necessarily happen overnight. Unless you're Kimi Antonelli, and maybe it will happen before your 18th birthday.
Listen, it might even happen before we get to Zandvoort. Who knows the way this season's going? Come on, here's a question
to release
for
this
you.
quite quickly.
So here's a question for you then. On the patience scale, Liam Lawson, Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
Where are we at with that? Is Lawson's patience going to be rewarded?
I was wondering what are the Red Bull family going to do? And I know you've just staked a claim there for Sergio Perez as to why he is very valuable. But actually, if you remove Sergio Perez from the equation, which is not an unlikely scenario, is a possible scenario at the end of the season, you then solve the problem because you've then got a seat for Ricciardo and you've got a seat for Liam Lawson. And I just wonder if that is going to be the easiest way of keeping everyone happy, because Red Bull surely don't want to lose Liam Lawson, someone that they've worked with for so many years, and to see him go to another team after all of this build up. Also, let's not forget Zandvoort is the track where Liam Lawson swapped in for Daniel Ricciardo. Yes. And if you cast your mind back a year ago after Singapore, when he had that incredible qualifying session, we were singing his praises, and there's no doubt he's obviously a very talented driver. But yeah, I don't know. I think the solution might be in perhaps looking at the end of the season. Perhaps if Sergio hasn't progressed, that might be the solution.
I don't disagree. The thing is, Sergio is contracted for next year. He has a contract for next year.
Yeah.
So if Red Bull don't take him up on that contract, I'm assuming they're going to have to pay him. And I'm assuming that's more money than Liam Lawson or Daniel Ricciardo. Assumptions on that one. I don't know the answer. So if you've got to pay off Sergio Perez, well, Liam Lawson's not going to attract a huge contract because you're paying out quite a bit already. And with Sergio, if Sergio's not driving, then that sponsorship money, does that still come to the team that he brings in, or do they lose that as well? Daniel Ricciardo. And I hate asking this question because I love Daniel Ricciardo. As a human being, I just think he's a brilliant guy. And as a racer, I think we have seen some brilliant moments. And I've thoroughly enjoyed watching and commentating on Daniel Ricciardo over the years. Is he, though, doing enough to warrant a promotion to Red Bull? And that's, that's a question. I think you need all the data. You need to look at it, at all the scenarios. But is he doing enough? Is a man who scored 3 points finishes this season, who trails his teammate 9-5 in qualifying and is 10 points behind his teammate. Is he doing enough to warrant a promotion?
Well, my comment back to that would be if you're Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo gets the promotion over you, you'd have a right to be furious, I think.
Well, I think
if you look at it over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think he already is. And I think he's already said, hang on a minute, if you're thinking about Daniel Ricciardo, you should maybe think about me. But if the assumption, and once again we're assuming here, if the assumption is that Red Bull, Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, etc., don't rate Yuki Tsunoda as a candidate for the main team, then a man who's not beating Yuki Tsunoda in the same car, I suppose from the outside, you wouldn't put him in as a contender either. But the trouble is with Daniel is you know what he can do when he's on form, and you know what he is capable of. But it's like, what's the best way? What's the best way to put this? I'll do a really controversial thing. I was a massive Queen fan. I thought Queen were a brilliant band. I really enjoyed listening to their earlier stuff. I think A Night at the Opera is one of the best albums ever recorded. But quite frankly, some of their albums in the latter stages of that band's career weren't that good. Anything from A Kind of Magic, after that, forget it. Yeah? We all know what Queen were capable of, but they didn't cut the mustard with their last few albums, right? And is Daniel Ricciardo, Brian May in disguise? I don't know. on this one,
I didn't think we'd be asking that question on the podcast today, but here we are.
They used to say it about John Barnes, didn't they? He scored that goal against Brazil. He was in the England squad for the rest of his career off that one goal against Brazil, where he danced through the defence. Is that Daniel Ricciardo? I don't know, so I'm not using this platform as a criticism of Daniel Ricciardo, but I can see where all the hesitancy, or hesitation even, is over putting him in. Now, if it was me, I'd put Liam Lawson in. Because I don't think you're going to have a worse situation on the track. But will Liam Lawson fit in with Max Verstappen? And will they be the teammates that Red Bull need? Will there be harmony between the two teammates? Is it better to put Daniel Ricciardo in because he's going to be maybe, I don't know, I'm assuming once again, a more compliant teammate to a Max Verstappen who is very much your number one driver?
At that stage of his career as well, where I think he could make peace, couldn't he, with the fact that Max is a three-time world champion.
And Liam goes into the RB, potentially, because you wouldn't demote Sergio down to the RB, because RB is meant to be the junior team that brings along the junior drivers. And they've got, it's not just Liam Lawson, there's Hadjar as well that's coming through and doing well. And it's a bit of a thorny situation for Red Bull to try and solve, but it's a good situation because they've got an abundance of talent there. But it's a talent that isn't quite right at the moment because one person at the top isn't producing the results that he was at the start of the season and that is demanded of him now.
Patience, there you go. That's what you need if you're Liam Lawson. Look, final sort of thing, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Crofty. This is not driver related, well, not driver market related at least. This is FIA related. And you brought my attention to this morning when we had a chat on the phone. Sort of passed me by, if I'm completely honest. And I felt slightly embarrassed that it had, but I think I sort of see why it has, because this all happens on the 31st of July. FIA had a new or an updated technical directive that was this: any system or mechanism which can produce systematically or intentionally asymmetric braking torques for a given axle is forbidden.
Yes.
I'm going to just ask you the simple question: what does that mean?
Well, listen, I'm not surprised it passed you by. Although it was reported, I'm still waiting for the announcement from the FIA. But it was reported to the teams, and the teams would have seen it coming, I'm sure. Basically, your braking system must be designed so that within each circuit of that system, the forces applied to the brake pads are the same. And they act as like opposing pairs on a given brake disc. So they go like that rather than my left hand being stronger than my right hand and doing that and then shifting, things around a bit as one reacts to a stronger force that's coming its way. Now, why would you want a stronger force on one side than the other? Well, at low speed, and these current cars, they do suffer understeer at low speeds. Yeah, what you can do is use those opposing forces and a stronger force to pivot the car round at low speed. So as you turn in, I'll do a turn in. Yeah. If you've got a stronger force on one side, yeah, you can pivot the car around like that. So you get it straighter quicker. And when you get it straighter quicker, you can get the power down quicker and you can get better exit from the corner. And you're not sliding the tyres quite as much and your lap time comes down as a result. It's pretty much how I understand it. But you know me and science. It's never the happiest bedfellow. But the inference is that teams have been doing that. It's nothing new. McLaren in the late 90s had the third brake, didn't they? Or the third pedal, I should say. And it was a photographer was it Mika Hakkinen or David Coulthard? One of the two. They crashed out in Brazil and the photographer just put his camera into the cockpit and was going through. I think it was Darren Heath was the photographer, fellow West Ham fan. Fine fellow. He was going through his pictures. Oh, wow, I've seen a third pedal here. What's all that about? And they realised that McLaren had got this trick brake system to help pivot the car around. So there's nothing new. But who's been doing it? Once again, we don't know. Now, if you go back to Australia, Max, of course, had to retire from that race because his brakes were smoking. Now, there was all sorts of reasons told to us by the team for that, but could it be that this system that was on there wasn't working properly and had kind of locked on a bit, and that was why Max was having the problems that day? Have other teams adopted that policy as well? Have Red Bull been told to take it off before now, and that's why other teams have kind of caught up in the last few races, because Red Bull have already been told to take the system off by the FIA, and now the FIA have realised that there's actually 2 or 3 teams running it, so now the ban is enforced more rigorously. All the time during the course of the season, the FIA will look into things, some things more steadfastly than they were before. George Russell, I think, was a victim of that in Spa, where the FIA were very much clamping down on the weight of cars at the end of races because they were suspecting some teams were using fuel as ballast, which you can't do in Formula One. And they were looking at the fuel that's in there and making sure it's drained out completely, much more rigorously towards the end of the first part of the season. So the FIA, when they get a whiff of what some teams are doing, will look into these things a little bit more thoroughly. And that, I think, is what has been going on. And that's why we've now got that technical directive that has come through. And it's basically regulation 11.1.2 of the tech regs that says, anything that can produce systematically or intentionally asymmetric braking torques for a given axle, forbidden. It's always been forbidden, but it's definitely forbidden. So we're on to you. And if you want to run it, but we'll get you for it and you'll get disqualified for it. So who's going to benefit? Who's not? Who knows? But
we'll only know when we get out on track, right? And we see if a team slides down the order. Yeah,
somebody somewhere at the FIA or at another team that may or may not have protested this thinks that they know and thinks that they've seen something. So, let that whet your appetite for a potential change in the pecking order over the next few races. Or it might just fade away into absolutely nothing, like flexi rear wings, flexi front wings, you name it.
Yeah. Good reason to tune into FP1, actually, because if you start seeing any team down in 19th and 20th, you expect it to be higher up. There you go.
No, but that won't happen happen in FP1. You'll see it more you're more likely to see it in FP2, but not necessarily in FP1 on that one.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, it's definitely, when you told me about it this morning, it's one of those, isn't it? Either has the potential to really explode as a story and become because it could be 3-4 teams that are doing it, and then maybe the likes of Ferrari haven't been doing it, and all of a sudden Ferrari are super competitive and can, look like the team to be. It's an interesting directive, isn't it? And I guess we'll only know this weekend.
Yeah. If you needed any more reason to tune in, there it is. But to be honest, after, nearly 3.5 weeks without Formula One, I don't think we need a reason to tune in other than Formula One is back.
Yeah, and it's probably not asymmetric braking as the sort of number one reason that you should be watching the Dutch Grand Prix this weekend. Let's do the timing, shall we, for this weekend, because it's a programme of F1 and F1 Academy. So Friday, FP1 is on air at 11 o'clock, and then FP2, the session starts at 3 p.m. Saturday, the final practice session is at 10:30. We'll then build up to qualifying from 1 o'clock with the session starting at 2. Sunday, we're on air from 12:30 before a lights out at 2 p.m. It's going to be good to be back in Zandvoort and to have Formula One back. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. And as for asymmetric braking, I'm just going to send a message to Taylor Swift's Instagram account because I think that's a great title for her next album.
When I was doing the intro to the podcast, I was not short of options of songs. She's obviously got a huge back catalogue, and they're all quite good words and formations of words in order to try and get them into everyday speak.
Yeah. Asymmetric braking, the new album. The one thing I didn't see at the gig, though, Fernando Alonso. Where were you, Fernando? I was looking for you all night.
Well, probably in the VIP area, right at the very front. That's why I didn't see it. Crofty, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Very much enjoyed this. And it's going to be super exciting. We've got Formula One back, thank goodness, after a few weeks off. And what an exciting final 10 races we've got. We're going to analyse all of them, of course, on the podcast, starting with next Tuesday following the Dutch Grand Prix. So we hope you can join us then. Until then, bye for now.
Bye-bye.